Hi everyone, we're back. I'm Chef Marcy and this is Marcy's Meal Deals. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to take classic comfort foods for a family of 4 and revamp them so they're a little bit healthier but still cost about $10 or less for 4 portions. Today what we're going to do is we're going to do my family's recipe of onion meatloaf. But we're going to take out some of the beef, some of the fat, some of the cholesterol, and we're going to replace it with some quinoa, but still try to keep all the flavor and all the yumminess inside. So what we've got here is we've got 1 pound of some 80-20 ground beef, and we've got a 1.5 cups of quinoa that I cooked in some beef broth to give it a little bit more of that heartiness and that flavor. So we're going to put that in here with our hamburger. There we go. And with that, we're going to just take like 1 can of stems and pieces mushrooms. Now with stems and pieces, even though it says pieces, some of those pieces are, well, a little bigger than others. So we're just going to give those a quick chop to make those some slightly smaller pieces. Just some bite-sized pieces that we want in our meatloaf. You can hear my kitties back there having a wrestling match behind me. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. They don't usually get hurt. But there we go. Those look pretty good. We're going to just put those right in our mix. That looks good. Oops, I forgot a fork. Excuse me. Which fork to use? We'll use that one. Now this is a can of French onion soup. A lot of times when I go shopping for my groceries and stuff, I use a lot of store brand. And one way I help keep my food costs down is by using store brands, by using coupons, by using the shopping clubs for the different stores, or by buying in bulk. So like for instance, the hamburger that I bought, rather than buying 1 pound of hamburger, which is all I needed for this recipe, I bought 5 pounds and chopped it down into 1 pound portions, and just use 1 pound at a time. This, however, for this recipe, I use the name brand French onion soup. It's the best. It makes the recipe come out the best. So that's one thing I splurged on, and I did figure that into the price of this recipe. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just take a little bit of the onions from the French onion soup and use a fork to fork some of that out. Not too much though. We don't want to just dump it in because we want to save some of those onions for the top of our meatloaf. And pour just a little bit of the broth in. So we're going to put about half the can of soup into the meatloaf. There we go. We'll save the rest of that for later. And of course, to bind it all together, we're going to use some eggs. There's 1, 2, and then because we took some of the fat out with using the quinoa instead of the ground beef, we want to add a little bit of fat back in, but we want to use a healthy fat. So we're going to use just an egg yolk out of a 1/3 egg. So we're going to separate the egg. And if you've got one of them fancy egg separators that you like to use, that's great. I like to do it by hand and just let the white flow through my fingers. There we go. And pop the yolk right in. So we've got 2 whole eggs and 1 yolk. Rather than rushing off camera to wash my hands, I've got a antibacterial cloth right here to use. And then we're going to use some oatmeal, somewhere between 1/2 and 1 cup, depending on how it all comes together, to bind our meatloaf together. Start with 1/2 cup and see how that goes. And then we just got to get right in there and do it. There really is no better way to mix a meatloaf thoroughly than to just get in there and squish it. Yeah, we're gonna need more oatmeal. There we go. Now I've already got my oven preheated to 350 degrees. And I have my pan here. This is just the pan I always use for meatloaf. It's just a little glass pan. What is that, 9x9? Sprayed with some cooking spray. I think we're going to use that whole cup this time. If you have a loaf pan that you prefer to use, or whatever you like to use to make your meatloaf in, you go for it. This is a family meal after all, so you do what works for your family. All right, that's coming together nicely now. There we go. That should hold a nice loaf shape. All right, now I'm going to take our loaf out. Plop it in our pan here. Get it in a nice loaf shape. There we go. And again, you know, it's nothing fancy. I mean, I do try to make nice things for my family, but you know, they're not picky, so as long as it tastes good, that's what matters. All right. I'll clean up my hands in a second. Now we're going to take the rest of our soup and we're going to cover the top with the onions as much as possible because we want to make like a little crust on the top with the onions. It gets nice and caramelized and just makes a really nice, flavorful top on the top of our meatloaf. And just let the juice pour over the rest of our meatloaf. There we go. See, I don't know if you can see that real well, how that come out. Can't show it too much or it's going to spill. I need to get a cameraman. Austin, where are you? I need you. Austin was a friend of mine from Art Institute. They used to help film some of my videos. All right, we're just going to pop that in the oven. Takes about 45 minutes or so, up to an hour, depending on how dense we got that meatloaf. So we'll come back to it. We want to get the inside temperature up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. For ground meat, that's what we want that's the safe temperature for it to be served at. In the meantime, all right, everyone, the meatloaf's done. The thermometer is at 165. My child Lunar has joined me for dinner, so we're going to take the meatloaf out and see how it came out. Oh, look at that. That looks good. Smells good too, doesn't it? All right, turn our oven off. Big old piece right down the middle there. Could you give me a plate, please? Beautiful. Beauteous. Oops. Had a little chunk go fly in there. All right. Get a little bit of green beans. Some sweet potatoes. potatoes unfortunately didn't come out as good as I had hoped, but the meatloaf is beautiful. It looks juicy and delicious. And that's our onion meatloaf.